Okay, hey everyone. Or is that hockey hey now? Hockey's back. At least it's close to being back. They should have a schedule out, the NHL, sometime tomorrow, probably Thursday at the latest, you would think. The word right now is that the Penguins would open at Philadelphia, which would be obviously amazing given where they ended up last year, how they ended up last year, and how eager they'd be to do something about that. Later in the show, we're going to have David Morehouse, the president of the Penguins. Unlike some team presidents, he's not directly involved in the sporting side of things. He oversees the business, but he's amazing with his knowledge of what he does, how he does it, the amount of branding that they do, the amount of studies that they do about who follows the Penguins, how closely, how old are they, why do they follow them, how the sport is growing in this area at a youth level. Should make for, I hope, a pretty interesting interview for you, particularly for those of you who participate or follow sports and hockey in particular at the younger levels around here. The future is actually much brighter for hockey in our region than it is even now. We're also going to have Alan Robinson on later. He's going to be talking Steelers, of course. He's the Tribs beat writer. We're going to be looking ahead to the draft, to who the Steelers might keep, who they might let go, how are they going to get under the cap when they're $12 million over right now. And yeah, we're going to look ahead to the rest of the NFL's playoffs as well, and who possibly could beat the New England Patriots the rest of the way. But we've got hockey back. It's a tremendous thing. I'm not going to lie. I've never hidden this. Hockey's my sport. I consider it to be the world's greatest sport. Loved it, played it. It's a beautiful thing to watch. It's an even more beautiful thing in my eyes to see how it's grown in our area, and to see the 3 Stanley Cups that the Penguins have won over the years. And I guess the question that we all have now as we look ahead is, can they win a 4th? And is there urgency now to win that 4th while Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin are in the 25 to 26-year-old range? Don't forget that Mario Lemieux, when he won his last cup in 92, was 26 years old. The chances don't just keep coming and coming and coming. You have to take advantage of what you have when it's there. The Las Vegas odds makers put the New York Rangers as an 8-1 favorite and gave the Penguins an 8 1/3 or something like that to 1, if memory serves. Like, they had to find a fraction just to make sure that they had one team, because it would look pretty lame, I guess, to just put out 2 teams as the odds-on winners. I don't know that the Penguins are legitimately the Stanley Cup favorite. The Rangers are going to be good. They added Rick Nash. They're very deep. They're disciplined on defense. We've seen them block shots. They have some scoring up front, not a ton. Marian Gaborik, Brad Richards. They have a world-class goalie in Henrik Lundqvist. They might be the team in the East. If the Penguins are going to become that team, and I'm not saying that they're not, but just to play a little bit of a devil's advocate with you here, if you look at them depth-wise, they're still deep. If you look at them from a diversification standpoint, they're actually arguably more diversified now than they were pre-Jordan Staal trade. And I'm not going to say that Brandon Sutter's a better player, but Brandon Sutter's more of a defensive-focused guy. And they very much strengthened their goaltending position by getting Thomas Vokoun, who I've already seen one publication describe this morning as being the best backup goalie in the NHL. That's probably a fair point to make. But what are the shortcomings? What are the areas that this team's going to need to address? The obvious one right now, to me, going into camp is going to be who's going to be the left winger on the second line. Evgeny Malkin and James Neal became very much accustomed to having Chris Kunitz over there. I don't fault the Penguins or Dan Bylsma for moving Kunitz up with Sidney Crosby and Pascal Dupuis You have to take care of Sid. They tried to do that with the signing of Zach Parise before the Minnesota Wild, who gave up $100 million to do that. I think it's going to be Tyler Kennedy going into the season, and I think you're going to see Ray Shero try to address it at the trade deadline further. But Kennedy is your guy for now. Not everybody's going to be crazy about that. They're talking about, some were talking about Eric Tangradi, talking about Bo Bennett. These are young guys. This isn't the time to be experimenting. This isn't the time to be tinkering and letting guys get their feet wet. It's a short schedule. Kennedy, you at least have a pretty good idea what you're going to get out of him, and you can have him take you to the deadline. They're solid up front. They're big enough up front. They're fast. I think they can kill penalties better than they did. Certainly better than they did against the Flyers. But are they strong enough on defense? I think that's a valid question right now. Zbynek Michalek did not play particularly well while he was with the Penguins, but you kind of knew what you had, and you lost some depth by losing him. Paul Martin is back, which I see as only a minus, possibly in the literal sense, too, once we get going. I wish the Penguins and Ray Shero had done something more aggressively to move him. They claim somebody would have taken his money. I'm not sure that I believe that, but if not, this coming summer, there's a new amnesty clause where they can just basically buy somebody out. But right now, as it shapes up, Letang and Orpik are your top two guys. Matt Niskanen moves up to the next pairing. I like that. I think he's going to be a good player. Sidney Crosby told me he thinks he's going to be the Penguins' breakout player for the year. But then you have Paul Martin. You're looking at Derek Engelland. You're looking at someone who spent most of the season for your sixth choice at Wilkes-Barre. That's not some auto Stanley Cup winning defense. It just isn't. The only way that it would be is if Letang came in and performed at the level that we saw a couple of years ago. Does he still have that in him? He's obviously still very young, presumably healthy. Does he want to be that number one, that Norris Trophy type defenseman that everybody knows that he can be? Kid's got it all. If he goes out there and logs 26, 27 minutes, he becomes that horse for you, especially in the bigger games. Then your defense takes on a different look, I think. Orpik can certainly match that with him. Plus, Orpik wouldn't have to play the power play. I think that's going to be one of the bigger variables here. Chris Letang knows he's up for the contract of his life coming soon. He knows the Penguins are ready to pay. I think this is going to be a very, very big year for him. I'd like to see the Penguins at some point give Simon Despres a chance, but it's pretty telling that he hasn't come up yet from Wilkes-Barre. To me, that's the area that this team needs to make sure is bolstered as much as possible. Because when you get down to what happened to them against the Flyers, yes, Fleury was bad. Yes, the penalty killers up front were bad. But ultimately, it still came down to a very rattled defensive core.